You know, fish keeping is a wonderful hobby. It's great for your mental health. It's great for you to connect yourself with nature. It's great for you to express yourself and be artistic and all of that kind of stuff. It's a beautiful thing as long as everything's going well. But when things don't go well, what do? That's when everything falls apart. But what we're going to help you out with here today is getting you prepared for when those things inevitably do go wrong. There's a lot of things that a lot of newer fish keepers don't think about in the very beginning that they really ought to think about so that they can be ready for if the worst happens. You're prepared for it, you know what you're going to do, and you act right away. In a lot of situations, this can be a matter of life or death for your fish. And in a lot of those situations too, it could be life or death of this hobby for you, because sometimes catastrophic things happen and people are like, screw this, I'm out. We don't want to see that happen. We want to keep you in it. So Lisa and I are going to give you some ideas of things to think about to have you be prepared for the inevitable. We're going to talk about things that a lot of people don't think about. The first thing to talk about is, what are you going to do if your fish gets sick, or if multiple fish in your aquarium get sick? See, here's what happens. People set up a new aquarium and they're all excited and everything's wonderful, and they watched the video on the KGTropicals channel that's called the most important aquarium video ever made, one of our most watched videos, and they understand the cycle and they're working their way through the trials and tribulations of a new aquarium, and this is wonderful for them. Everything's great. And then their fish gets sick, and that's when they say, oh no, what am I going to do? Let me go to the Google machine and let me type in, my fish is sick, what do I do? And all of a sudden now I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't know what this is. I think my fish has that, but this guy says it has that. What am I supposed to do? I need to order all of these medications, and then I need to wait 3 or 4 days for them to show up. And then I give them to my fish, and by then it's too late. Or maybe it's something that if caught early enough, you would be ready and you can take care of it, and the fish never gets sick to begin with because you saw the signs, you knew what was happening, you were prepared. That could be the matter of life or death. It's better than what I just said, waiting around hoping that the medications get here on time and you had to order them because your local fish store didn't have them. Let's not waste any time. Let's think about what you're going to do if your fish gets sick. The first thing that I would recommend is that you have some medications available. These medications, I actually have a couple of them right here. What are the odds? Well, I happen to have Maricin 2 and aquarium salt. I swear to you, I didn't plan this. They were just sitting there. Lisa had them in here. We've got a lot of fish and we deal with stuff, and she's very good about reacting right away. We always have these available because we sell these, so it's just a matter of going to the warehouse and picking them up. But I call it a warehouse, it's actually a barn. But anyway, these are two great products to have available. Maricin 2 or Maricin 1, or both if you want to have perfect world scenario. These are great to have around. These are antibiotics, so any kind of infections or anything like that that your fish come down with, you can definitely take care of it. And it's not just sicknesses. You might have a fish that gets injured and gets an infection, which needs antibiotics. Aquarium salt. This is another absolute staple. Every fish keeper should have aquarium salt. This is not going to make your aquarium a saltwater aquarium, folks. If you're new to aquariums, you might be like, but my tank is freshwater. That doesn't make sense to put salt in there. No, that's not what this is. You're not going to be putting it so much of it in that you're going to affect the salinity of the aquarium. It's not like that. We're talking about using this as like an elixir, as a feel-good type thing for the fish in the water. A lot of people use it to buffer their water all the time, and it's not just something that they use for a medication type thing. Aquarium salt, antibiotics, antifungal medications, anti-parasitic medications, things like Paracleanse through Fritz. These are great things to have around. And an ick medication. Now, this is one of the best ick medications if it's caught early. Turn the temperature up, put some aquarium salt in there, you should be fine. But if it gets really bad and you get home from a vacation and all of a sudden your fish are all infected with ick, you might need to go to something stronger. And having one of those medications sitting around is going to be a matter of life or death. Now, I understand. These are not cheap. And I understand. There's going to be some of my friends that are watching this that live overseas or even just up above the border to my north in Canada that don't have access to these medications. I'm very sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But for people in the United States and other areas where these medications are legal to buy, I would start collecting these medications and just have them on hand. I've said this so many times on my channel. I've said it in my sleep before. It's better to have this and not need it than to need it and not have it. These things have an incredibly long shelf life. I don't even know. Yeah, they say it does expire, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they do. I think they're forced by our government to put expiration dates on there. These things will last you forever. As long as this doesn't get wet, it's going to last you forever. Keep these things around just in case. Maybe once a month, buy one of these medications. Now you have it. Next month, you get the next one. Take your little extra money that you have and buy these up. Every time you go to the fish store, pick up another medication. Or on my website or any website, whatever it is, just grab one if you can. And eventually have all of them, and then you will be ready if things go bad.
What are you going to do if you find a fish that's injured? Well, automatically you're going to want to take care of that fish and heal it, right? Well, one of the things I would recommend is to have some kind of quarantine tank, like have a spare 10-gallon. Actually, let me rephrase that. Depending on what kind of fish you have, whether it's a big Oscar or if you have little community fish, that would make me decide what kind of quarantine tank I would want to have on hand. If I had little fish, I'd want to make sure I have a 10-gallon. If I had big fish, I'd want to make sure I have probably a 20-gallon. I have had to treat an Oscar in a 20-gallon before. But the reason why I say all that is because, well, you want to have a tank 100% isolated for that fish. You don't want other fish in it. You don't want to have a bunch of decorations or anything like that. And when you have to medicate the fish, you're using less packets. Those things get expensive. They really do. You don't want to have to treat a fish in a 125-gallon tank with a bunch of other fish that don't even need the medicine, and you don't want to have to spend that kind of money on the medicine. So I recommend either having a 10-gallon aquarium or a 20-gallon aquarium if you have larger fish, and putting that fish in the aquarium. I personally would start with clean water. Clean water is key to making sure that that fish doesn't get an infection, from the injury. So make sure you have clean water. Also, aquarium salt is very beneficial for injuries. It helps to keep that injury clean. It helps to keep the water good for the fish. It's just a good thing to have on hand. So depending on what kind of injury your fish has, you may want to just start with that. You definitely want to have antibiotics on hand, either a Maricin or a Maricin 2, because if you notice that there's an infection in the fish, then you want to make sure you have it ready to treat immediately. So that's what I would do. I would have an extra 10 or 20-gallon aquarium, and I would have medication and aquarium salt on hand.
Now, this is one that a lot of people don't like me to talk about because I have my particular preferences, and they're very expensive, and I understand that can be difficult, but what are you going to do when the power goes out? There's a lot of ways to be ready for this, and this is very critical. Power outages, you have no idea how many fish die from power outages. We just had a friend, I'm not going to mention names, that just last week, power was out for like 4 days in Texas, and they lost a lot of fish. I'm not going to say how many, but a lot. of fish because they have a lot of tanks and they didn't have a setup that they could take care of all of them during these power outages. So you are watching this video so that you can be prepared for these things. What are you going to want to do so that that doesn't happen to you? It's happened to Lisa and I too. There's a lot of options, but one of the first things that you need to know is you need to keep the water moving. That's what's going to keep the water oxygenated. So whether that be a battery operated air pump, a USB operated air pump that you take your laptop that you charged up in the car and you bring that in, you set your laptop next to the tank and you plug your USB air pump into it, and whatever it is, there's a lot of different options for air pumps that are either battery operated or USB driven. Those are going to be great. It's just going to keep it moving. Yeah, your entire filter is not running, which would be ideal, and your heaters, but at least you're keeping that water moving. When that water sits stagnant, that's when bad things start happening. That's when the room starts filling up with smoke and your fish start to suffer. So keeping that water moving is mission critical. That's one of the very first things that you're going to want to do. And your next option would be, I think this is probably the second as far as the expenses go. The most expensive would be a power generator, a gas-powered generator. These are not cheap. They cost about as much as your aquarium does, but they're cheaper than the next option that I'm going to talk about if you want to get a big one that's going to last a long time. A generator is going to be great. Lisa and I, 2 years ago, I did a video about this. We had a huge storm that was coming through and it was supposed to blow up our area. And we went out and bought 2 generators. Now, when I was standing in line at Lowe's with these 2 generators that I think were like $550 a piece, I said to everybody looked at me like I was crazy. I said, hey y'all, everybody that's in here, you're welcome. The power is not going to go out because I'm buying these generators. And everybody laughed because that's how it works. When you have these things, nothing ever happens. But if you don't have them, that's when all hell breaks loose and you're not ready for them. So everybody got a kick out of that. And the power never did go out, which is nice, but you know, we were ready if it did. Generators are expensive. We bought 2 because we have tanks in different places and we have our fish tanks are not in our house. This is a separate building. So we bought 2 of them, one for here and one to run an air conditioner in our bedroom because it happened in the middle of summer and I'm not going to sleep in the hot, but that's what we did there. If you're buying one generator, you might spend $450, $500, but think about this. You're going to be able to run your aquariums bare bones, meaning plug some air pumps in, maybe a heater every once in a while, just kind of keep the temperature close, but not running your heater all the time, depending on what time of year this happens. And you can also plug your refrigerator in. You can plug your cell phone into that generator and charge it. So it's not just for your aquariums. Generators are very versatile. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can basically go on business as usual if you have a generator. So they are well worth the money, not just for your aquariums. You plug your refrigerator in there, you don't lose all that meat that you just bought. And now it's all going to go rotten because the power's out. You don't want to do that. So yeah, generator is absolutely the best way to go, but I can understand it can be pricey. And the last option would be the most expensive option. Some of these, I'm not going to lie to you, are downright ridiculous. And that is the larger battery banks, backup battery. They're like the size of a suitcase. We have a couple of them. They're great. They work extremely well, but we're very fortunate. We have a YouTube channel. This company sent them to us for free to do a review on. And I reviewed them and they work really, really well, but they're like $800-900 a piece. And that's absurd. And what I don't like about those big batteries, yeah, they work well and they work for a long time, but once they're out, where are you going to charge them? There's nothing you can do. You can plug them into your car, but that's going to take 4 days to charge them up. So they basically become useless. They're great if things are out for a couple hours, but if they're out for days, you're screwed. That's where getting a gas can and filling up your generator can save if you have a generator. So generator's cheaper and also last longer because you can refill the gas. But The other thing is, what was the other thing? I had another thing about those big batteries that was bad. I don't know. It doesn't matter. They work. They work well. They do what they're supposed to do, but they're extremely expensive. And you run into that scenario of, well, it's been 9 hours and the batteries are dead. And so now everything's going to die. I don't like that. So I don't know that I would use those for aquariums. You can, but probably I would go as minimal as possible with those. That's what I would do. But then again, I would just buy a generator instead. But the biggest thing that I want you to think about, if this happens like it happened to our friend in Texas a couple weeks ago, heat was not an issue. That was a non-issue because it's Texas and it's hot and, it's the time of year. It's May when I'm recording this. So, it was plenty warm down there. It's not a problem. Usually these big power outage storms are going to be in the summertime, at least here. It doesn't snow here. I know up north, you get a lot of snowstorms, trees fall. You need to pay attention to heat. You're going to want to keep your aquariums warm. So I would definitely look into alternatives to keeping your aquariums warm. We're not going to get into that in this video because the video is already going to be way too long. But there are ways, dumping warm water into there, water that you boil on a gas fireplace. There's ways that you can do it. People have wrapped blankets around them. There's ways that you can keep them warm. But if you're using some type of portable power to get you through a power outage, I would go, for the summertime, I would go air pumps with air stones. And if you can, I would go filters second. I ain't going to worry about lights. Lights are going to be fine. I'm going to open up some windows so my plants will get light. They're going to be fine. My priority is going to be keep water moving in the tank to keep the water oxygenated so the fish don't suffocate. And if it is a cold time of year, then I would be focused on heat, which heat will drain power banks or generators. You'll go through a lot of gas. But hey, listen, if it's a matter of life or death with your fish, you got to do what you got to do. But keeping the water moving is the critical part. If you only have one aquarium, it's a 75-gallon tank. It's in your living room. You can plug everything into one power strip, plug that power strip into your generator, and run it all as if nothing ever changed. Sure, do that. That's great. But if you have multiple tanks, take an air pump, run it to a bunch of tanks, just keep that water moving, and hope that it happens at a time of year where it's not freezing cold outside.
What are you going to do if your fish suddenly breed? Well, there's a difference in emergency situations where they breed and you don't know what's going to happen. And then there is the, I plan on breeding situation. Well, if you have fish just start popping out babies like guppies or your platies or, your live bear fish, you might want to find somewhere to put them because you don't want them to get ate. Some parrots will eat their fry, or the other fish in there will eat the fry. It happens. It's just nature. But if you want to prevent that from happening, it's nice to have a little breeder box available. Have it on hand just in case something like that happens. If you know you have live bears, it's good to have that on hand. Now, if you are planning on breeding, then have a 10-gallon on hand and make sure that it's cycled and have it ready for the babies so that you can pop them right in there as soon as they come out. I've had to have a 10-gallon available because I have Mbunas, or John does, the yellow labs. I've stuck the female Mbuna in the 10-gallon and waited for her to spit the fry out. And then I put her back in the tank after a day or two to make sure, everything was good. But I've done it that way. So if you're planning it, it's a totally different story than emergency. Now, what would you feed those fish if they came unexpectedly? You don't have any fry food available. All you have is the food that you feed your fish right now. Hopefully you have flakes, because you can take for a few days, take those flakes and just, make them super, super fine and make them powdery and stick it in there, and that'll feed the fry. If you have a sponge filter in one of your aquariums, like one that has, it's been in there for a long time, you can stick that sponge filter in that aquarium, because what does sponge filters do? They collect things. They collect good and bad things. And fry will eat off of the sponge filter because there's been food particles that have gathered on that sponge filter. Have you ever seen shrimp on a sponge filter eating and doing their thing? That's because there's stuff on there for them and they like it. So you can do that, and fry will eat off of that as well. But I wouldn't say that's a long-term option. That's just, for the very beginning. So again, have a backup aquarium or a breeder box. Have some flake food that you can squish up to make it real fine and powdery, and that'll get you through. But don't freak out. It'll be okay, and you will more than likely have a whole bunch of those little fish grow up, and you're not even going to know what to do with them.
So there you go. There's a few things that a lot of people don't think about, that they need to think about, because you need to be ready in case these things happen. I hope this opens your eyes up. And listen, I know you're probably like, well, shoot, I can't go buy all the stuff he just said. I understand. Not expecting anybody to go and do that. What I am telling you is things that you need to think about so that you can be prepared if things go bad. If you collect these things one at a time, you're going to feel better with each thing that you get to prepare yourself for the inevitable, because it will happen. Everything I just talked about and everything Lisa just talked about will happen in your journey of fish keeping. To be ready for those things to happen is absolutely critical, and it will save your fish, and it might just save your hobby here. So collect one of them at a time, do it as you can, and then eventually you'll have it all, and you can have that peace of mind knowing that if any of these things happen, you're ready. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.